Okay, chapter 5. On arriving at the depot, my nerve failed me. I was afraid to go in. I didn't know what I was scared of, but I was scared. Okay, so I think he's just getting so nervous. That's what I'm thinking. That he's about to get his dogs, that he's just, he doesn't know what to do, how to go in and talk to the guy, because he's just very excited. Before going around to the front, I peeked in a window. The station master was in his office looking at some papers. He was wearing a funny little cap that had no top in it. He looked friendly enough, but I still couldn't muster up enough courage to go in. Okay, so even though the guy looks really friendly, he still feels really just scared and doesn't feel courageous. I cocked my ear to see if I could hear puppies crying. So that's when you're kind of putting your ear up in the air, trying to see if you can hear something, but could hear nothing. A bird started chirping. It was a yellow canary in a cage. The station master walked over and gave it some water. I thought anyone that is kind to birds surely wouldn't be mean to a boy. Okay, so now he thinks, okay, the station master gave the canary some water, little birdie, so he's probably a nice person. Okay, so I'm going to try to go ahead and go in then. With my courage built up, I walked around to the front and eased myself past the office. He glanced at me and turned. Okay. Turned back to the papers. I walked clear around the depot and again walked slowly past the office. Glancing from the corner of my eye, I saw the station master looking at me and smiling. He opened the door and came out on the platform. I stopped and leaned against the building. Yawning and stretching his arms, he said, "It sure is hot today. It doesn't look like it's ever going to rain." I looked up at the sky and said, "Yes, sir, it is hot, and we sure could do with a good rain. We need one bad up where I come from." Okay, so the station master told him, it doesn't look like it's ever going to rain. He just started making kind of small talk with him. And Billy said, "Yes, we need water. We need some rain come to where I'm from." So where Billy lives, I guess it hasn't rained in a while. They need water for their crops probably too. He asked me where I lived. I told him up the river a ways. "You know," he said, "I have some puppies in there for a boy that lives up on the river. His name is Billy Coleman. I know his dad, but I've never seen the boy. I figured he would be in after them today." Okay, so on hearing this remark, my heart jumped clear up in my throat. I thought surely it was going to hop right out onto the depot platform. I looked up and tried to tell him who I was, but something went wrong. When the words finally came out, they sounded like the squeaky old pulley in our well when Mama drew up a bucket of water. So instead of saying, "I'm Billy Coleman," because he said, "I'm waiting for a little boy named Billy Coleman." That's what the station master said, so that he can pick up his puppies. I thought he was going to be in today. And Billy got so excited and so nervous that he said, instead of saying, "I'm Billy Coleman," he said, "I'm Billy Coleman." He sounded squeaky. I could see a twinkle in the station master's eyes. He came over and laid his hand on my shoulder. In a friendly voice, he said, "So you're Billy Coleman. How is your dad?" I told him Papa was fine, and I handed him the slip my grandpa had given me. "They sure are fine-looking pups," he said. "You'll have to go around to the freight door." I'm sure my feet never touched the ground as I flew around the building. He unlocked the door, and I stepped in, looking for my dogs. I couldn't see anything but boxes, barrels, old trunks, and some rolls of barbed wire. Okay, so he flew around the building, he unlocked the door, and when he came in, he saw all of these other things, but not his dogs. The kindly station master walked over to one of the boxes. "Do you want box and all?" he asked. I told him I didn't want the box. All I wanted was the dogs. "How are you going to carry them?" he asked. "I think they're a little too young to follow." So the station master just wanted to know, if you're not going to take the box, how are you going to carry the puppies? Because they can't follow you because they'll be too tired. They're too little. I held out my gunny sack. He looked at me and looked at the sack. Chuckling, he said, "Well, I guess dogs can be carried that way, same as anything else, but we'll have to cut a couple of holes to stick their heads through so they won't smother." Okay, so they need little holes to be able to breathe well. Getting a claw hammer, he started tearing off the top of the box. As nails gave way and boards splintered, I heard several puppy whimpers. I didn't walk over, I just stood and waited. So he heard the puppies as the box is getting opened. After what seemed like hours, the box was open. He reached in, lifted the pups out, and set them down on the floor. "Well, there they are," he said. "What do you think of them?" Oh my goodness, how do you think Billy feels now? Pretty excited, huh? He finally is getting his puppies. They're on the floor. He's just probably staring at them. I didn't answer. I couldn't. All I could do was stare at them. They seemed to be blinded by the light and kept blinking their eyes. One sat down on his little rear and started crying. The other one was waddling around and whimpering. I wanted so much to step over and pick them up. Several times I tried to move my feet, but they seemed to be nailed to the floor. I knew the pups were mine, all mine, yet I couldn't move. Oh, he was so excited. My heart started acting like a drunk grasshopper. I tried to swallow and couldn't. My Adam's apple wouldn't work. Oh my goodness. Okay. One pup started my way. I held my breath. On he came until I felt a scratchy little foot on mine. The other pup followed. A warm puppy tongue caressed my sore foot. I heard the station master say, "They already know you." I knelt down and gathered them in my arms. I buried my face between their wiggling bodies and cried. The station master, sensing something more than just two dogs and a boy, waited in silence. Oh, that is so sweet. So he gave them their moment to just kind of cuddle together, because he could see that this was way more than just a boy getting two dogs. He saw that there was going to be a huge bond here, and that Billy really, this was a very special moment for Billy. Rising with two pups held close to my chest, I asked if I owed anything. He said, "There is a small feed bill, but I'll take care of it. It's not much anyway." Taking his knife, he cut two slits in the sack. He put the pups in it and worked their heads through the holes. As he handed the sack to me, he said, "Well, there you are. Goodbye and good hunting." Walking down the street towards town, I thought, now, maybe the people won't stare at me when they see what I've got. After all, not every boy owns two good hounds. Turning the corner into the main street, I threw out my chest. Okay, so he was like very proud of himself. He's walking with his chest in the air. He thought, I have two good hounds. Now these people will surely stop laughing at me, and they won't stare at me. I hadn't gotten far before I realized that the reception I got wasn't what I thought it would be. So reception is how people receive you. Okay, so how people act when you're around. So he thought, people were going to think, wow, look at him. He's got two good hounds. That's so cool. But instead, people began to stop and stare. Some even snickered. I couldn't understand why they were staring. Surely it couldn't be at the two beautiful hound pups sticking out from the gunny sack. Thinking that maybe I had a hole in the seat of my breeches. So that means breeches is undies. Okay, it's kind of like where your pants are in the back, and that his underwear were, So he thought maybe on my pants, in the back of my pants, my underwear are showing. So he thought he had a hole there. I looked over to my reflection in a plate glass window. I craned my neck for a better view of my rear. I could see a patch there all right and a few threadbare spots, but no whiteness was showing through. So he thought, okay, well, my underwear are not showing, so I don't know what they're laughing at. I figured that the people were just jealous because they didn't have two good hounds. I saw a drunk coming. He was staggering all over the street. Just as he was passing me by, I heard him stop. As I looked back, I saw that he was staring wide-eyed at my sack. Closing his eyes, he rubbed them with his hands. Opening them again, he stared. Shaking his head, he staggered on down the street. All around, people began to roar with laughter. Someone shouted, "What's the matter, John? You seeing things today?" I hurried on, wanting to get away from the stares and the snickers. It wouldn't have happened again in 100 years, but there they came, the same two old women I'd met before. We stopped and had another glaring fight. Oh my goodness. So poor Billy, everyone's making fun of him just because he has doggies in his little sack. And now the same two women that called him wild last time, they're back. One said, "I declare." The other one snorted, "Well, I never." My face burned. I couldn't take any more. After all, a man can stand so much and no more. In a loud voice I said, "You may have these people fooled with those expensive looking feathers in your hat, but I know what they are. They're goose feathers painted with iodine." One started to say something, but her words were drowned out by the roaring laughter from all around. Gathering their long skirts, they swished on down the streets. All around me, people began to shout questions and laugh. One wanted to know if I had the mother in the sack. Storekeeper stepped out and gawked. I could see the end of the street, but it looked as if it was 100 miles away. My face was as red as a foxtail's. I ducked my head, tightened my grip on the sack, and walked on. Poor Billy, everyone's just coming out, staring at him, laughing at him. They're just, so now people are laughing at him. They think it's funny that he has the puppies in his back like that. I don't know why, but I don't know where they came from, but like chickens coming home to roost, they flocked around me. Most of them were about my age. Some were a little bigger, some smaller. They ganged around me, screaming and yelling. They started clapping their hands and chanting, "The dog boy has come to town! The dog boy has come to town!" That is mean. My heart burst. Tears came rolling. The day I waited for so long had turned black and ugly. So weird. I don't know why they're doing that. It's very mean. The leader of the gang was about my size. He had a dirty, freckled face, and his two front teeth were missing. I suppose he had lost them in a back alley fight. His shock of yellow, sunburnt hair bobbed up and down as he skipped and jumped to the rhythm of the dog boy song. He wore a pair of cowboy boots. They were 2 sizes too big for him, no doubt handed down by an older brother. So this was the leader of the gang of all of the people who were just being mean, like all the kids that were chanting, "The dog boy has come to town." He stomped on my right foot. Oh, ouch. And he had cowboy boots on, remember. And I looked down and saw a drop of blood ooze out from under the broken nail. It hurt like the dickens, but I gritted my teeth and walked on. Freckleface pulled the ear of my little girl pup. I heard her painful cry. That was too much. I hadn't worked 2 long, hard years for my pups to have some freckle-faced punk pull their ears. That was just mean. Swinging the sack from my shoulder, I walked over and set it down in a doorway. As I turned around to face the mob, I doubled up my fists and took up a Jack Dempsey stance. Freckleface said, "So you want to fight?" He came in swinging. I reached back in Arkansas somewhere. That just means he reached way back, all the way to another state. By the time my fist had traveled all the way down to the Cherokee Strip, there was a lot of power behind it. So he punched that kid that pulled his little puppy's, the girl puppy's ear. Smack on the end of Freck's nose, it exploded. With a loud grunt, he sat down in the dusty alley. Grabbing his nose in both hands, he started rocking and moaning. I saw the blood squeeze out between his fingers. So it seems like he broke, the kid with the freckles, I think he broke his nose. Another one sailed in. He didn't want to fight. He wanted to wrestle. He stuck a finger in my mouth. I ground down. Ground down means he bit down. Shaking his hand and yelling like the Who's owls were after him, he ran across the street. Okay. Another one bored in. I aimed for his eye, but my aim was a little low. I caught him in the Adam's apple. A sick look came over his face. Bending over, croaking like a bullfrog that had been caught by a water moccasin, He started going around in a circle. Oh man. So he caught him right in the middle of his throat where the Adam's apple is, and that hurt. But there were too many of them. By sheer weight and numbers, they pulled me down. I managed to twist over on my stomach and buried my face in my hands. I could feel them beating and kicking my body. All at once, the beating stopped. I heard loud cries from the gang. Turning over on my back, I was just in time to see the big marshal plant a number 12 boot on the seat of the last kid. I just knew I was next. I wondered if he'd kick me while I was down. Okay, so the marshal got rid of all the kids, but for some reason Billy's thinking, oh, he's about to hit me too. I lay where I was. He started towards me. I closed my eyes. I felt a hand as big as an anvil clamp on my shoulder. Okay, so he just put his hand on Billy's shoulder. The marshal did. I thought, he's going to stand me up and then knock me down. He raised me to a sitting position. His deep, friendly voice said, "Are you all right, son?" I opened my eyes. There was a smile on his wide, rugged face. In a choking voice, I said, "Yes, sir, I'm all right." So he helped Billy, and Billy was scared of the marshal all this time, and the marshal ended up helping him. He helped me to my feet. His big hands started brushing the dust from my clothes. "Those kids are pretty tough, son," he said, "but they're really not bad. They'll grow up someday." "Marshal," I said, "I wouldn't have fought them, but they pulled my pup's ears." He looked over to my sack. One pup had worked its way almost out of the hole. The one's head and two little paws were sticking out. Both of them were whimpering. A smile spread all over the big marshal's face. "So that's what started the fight," he said. Walking over, he knelt down and started petting the pups. "They're fine-looking dogs," he said. "Where did you get them?" I told him I ordered them from Kentucky. "What did they cost you?" he asked. $40, I said. He asked if my father had bought them for me. "No," I said, "I bought them myself." He asked me where I got the money. "I worked and saved it," he said. "It takes a long time to save $40, he said. "Yes," I said, "it took me 2 years." 2 years, he exclaimed. I saw an outraged look come over the marshal's face. Reaching up, he pushed his hat back. He glanced up and down at the street. I heard him mutter, "There's not a one in that bunch with that kind of grit." So that means out of all those boys that were trying to fight Billy, not one of them has that kind of determination and hard work to save for 2 years. Picking up my sack, I said, "Thanks for helping me out. I guess I'd better be heading for home." He asked where I lived. I said, "Up the river a way." "Well, you've got time for a bottle of pop before you go, haven't you?" I started to say no, but looking at his big friendly smile, I smiled back and said, "I guess I have." Walking into a general store, the marshal went over to a large red box and pulled back the lid. He asked what kind I wanted. I'd never had a bottle of pop in my life and didn't know what to say. Seeing my hesitation, he said, "This strawberry looks pretty good." Okay, so he'd never had soda before in his life, and the marshal was trying to get him one, and he didn't know what flavor he wanted. So the marshal picked strawberry for him. I said that would be fine. The cool pop felt wonderful on my hot, dry throat. My dark little world had brightened up again. I had my pups and had found a wonderful friend. I knew that the stories I had heard about marshals weren't true. Never again would I be scared when I saw one. That's good. So he had heard all these scary stories about marshals. Now he knew that marshals can actually be pretty nice. Back out on the street, I shook hands with the marshal, saying as I did, if you're ever up in my part of the country, come over and see me. You can find our place by asking at my grandfather's store. "Store," he said. "Why, the only store upriver is about 30 miles from here." "Yes," I said, "that's my grandpa's place." He asked if I was afoot. "Yes," I said. Afoot means he's walking. He doesn't have anyone to take him back and forth in a car. "You won't make it tonight," he said, "will you?" "No," I said. "I intend to camp out somewhere." I saw he was bothered. "I'll be all right," I said. "I'm not scared of the mountains." He looked at me and at my pups. Taking off his hat, he scratched his head. Chuckling deep down in his barrel-like chest, he said, "Yes, I guess you'll be all right. Well, goodbye and good luck. If you're ever in town again, look me up." So Billy was going to have to camp out somewhere because he didn't have time It was already getting late and he didn't have time to get back in town before nighttime, to get back to his town before nighttime again. From far down the street, I looked back. The marshal was still standing there where I had left him. He waved his hand. I waved back. On the outskirts of town, I stopped and picked up a can and my provisions. So he got the can. Remember, he had some eggs and he wanted to boil them, but he wasn't able to because he didn't have a can last time. I hadn't gone far before I realized that I had undertaken a tough job. The sack became heavier and heavier. The sack that he was carrying with his puppies, right? Because if you carry puppies for a little bit, then, they're not that heavy. But if you just keep, you're walking and carrying, they start to feel heavier. For a while, my pups cried and whimpered. They had long since pulled their heads back into the sack. I would peek at them every once in a while. They were doing all right, curled up into two little round balls on my bundles. They were fast asleep. Deep in the heart of the Sparrowhawk Mountains, night overtook me. There in a cave with a stream close by, I put up for the night. So he found a cave in the Sparrowhawk Mountains, and he decided, okay, this is where I'm staying tonight. Okay, he's going to go to sleep now. Taking my pups and bundles from the gunny sack, I used it to gather leaves to make us a bed. My pups followed me on every trip, whimpering and crying. So he's just gathering leaves, and every time he goes to get some more leaves, then the puppies were coming over with him. They were following him, and they were whimpering and crying and tumbling and falling over sticks and rocks because they're so little. After the bed was made, I built a fire. In a can of water from the mountain stream, I boiled 3 eggs. Next, I boiled half of the remaining salt pork. Cutting the meat up in small pieces, I fed it to my pups. Each of us had a piece of candy for dessert. My pups enjoyed the candy. With their needle-sharp teeth, they gnawed and worried with it until it was melted away. Okay, so they ate, the pups ate the salt pork, Billy ate the 3 eggs, and they all ate some candy, the one that he had bought for his sisters, remember? While they were busy playing, I dragged up several large timbers and built a fire which would last for hours. In a small time, the cave grew warm and comfortable from the heat. Okay, so now the cave is nice and warm because he made that fire. The leaves were soft and felt good on my tired body and sore feet. As I lay stretched out, my pups crawled all over me. I played with them. They would waddle up to the front of the cave, look at the fire, and come scampering back to roll and play in the soft leaves. Okay, so he was playing with his pups. They were crawling all over him. They would go in the front of the cave and then come back. But remember, the fire's right there, right in the front of the cave. I noticed the boy's dog was much larger than the girl dog. He was a deeper red in color. His chest was broad and solid. His puppy muscles nodded and rippled under the velvety skin. He was different in every way. He would go closer to the fire. I saw right away he was bold and aggressive. So he had a lot of muscles. He was bold. He was aggressive. Seemed like he was very brave. Once he went around the fire and ventured out into the darkness. I waited to see if he would come back. He came wobbling to the mouth of the cave, but hesitated there. He made several attempts to come back in, but the flames were leaping higher by the minute. The space between the fire and the wall of the cave was much hotter than when he had ventured out. Whimpering and crying, he kept trying to get around the fire. I said not a word, just watched. So the dog left the cave just to check out what's going on out there. And then when he came back, the fire had gotten bigger. So it was warming the sides of the cave. And for him to come inside, it was like he didn't want to touch the cave sides because they were hot. And he didn't want to get burned by the fire, and there was not a lot of space. So he was whimpering and crying, and Billy just watched him to see what he was going to do about it. Puppy though he was, he did something which brought a smile to my face. Getting as close as he could to the side of the cave, he turned his rear to the fire. Hopping sideways, yipping at every jump, he made it through the heat and sailed into the pile of leaves. He had had enough. Curling up in a ball close to me, he went to sleep. So he hopped sideways to get in the cave so that he wouldn't get burnt. The girl pup was small and timid. Her legs and body were short. Her head was small and delicate. She must have been a runt in the litter. I didn't have to look twice to see what she lacked in power, she made up in brains. So that means she wasn't as strong as the boy dogs, but she was really smart. She was a much smarter dog than the boy dog, more sure of herself, more cautious. I knew when the trail became tough, she would be the one to unravel it. So that means he knew that when they would be hunting and they would come, they would be like, oh my gosh, now what are we going to do? We can't get the coon, or, he hid in a tree, that she would be able to figure out a way. I knew I had a wonderful combination. In my dogs, I had not only the power, but the brain along with it. I was a tired boy. My legs were stiff and my feet sore and throbbing. My shoulders were red and raw from the weight of the sack. I covered my pups up in the leaves and moved my body as close to them as I could. I knew as night wore on and the fire died down, the chill would come. Tired but happy, I fell asleep. So he's already exhausted and he finally was able to fall asleep. Along in the silent hours of night, I was awakened. I opened my eyes but didn't move. I lay and listened, trying to figure out what it was that had aroused me. So he's like, why did I wake up? What's going on? At first I thought one of my pups had awakened me by moving and whimpering. I discarded this thought. Discard means to throw away, for I could see that they were both fast asleep. I decided it was my imagination working. So he's like, did my puppies wake me up? And he looked at them and they were really sleeping really nice and cozy. And so he thought, okay, well, I guess it's just my imagination. My fire had burned down, leaving only a glowing red body of coals. The cave was dark and silent. Chill from the night had crept in. I was on the point of getting up to rebuild my fire when I heard what had awakened me. So he was going to add more wood to the fire because it was getting chilly in the cave. And then he heard something. At first I thought it was a woman screaming. I listened. My heart began to pound. I could feel the strain all over my body as nerves grew tighter and tighter. So he was starting to get really stiff and stressed out because it's like, what is that noise? It came closer this time. The high pitch of the scream shattered the silence of the quiet night. The sound seemed to be all around us. It screamed its way into the cave and rang like a blacksmith's anvil against the rock walls. The blood froze in my veins. I was terrified. Although I had never heard one, I knew what it was. It was the scream of a mountain lion. Oh, that is creepy. So imagine you're in a cave. It's dark. You're by yourself. How old is Billy now? Is he 12? I think he was 12 at this point. And he is and he's just with his little puppies, and it's the middle of the night and he hears the scream of a mountain lion. He doesn't have, like most hunters have guns, just like his mom said. Billy can't have a gun because he's too little, but most hunters do have guns, so they could have shot the mountain lion if it came to attack them, but Billy didn't have that. The big cat screamed again. Leaves boiled and stirred where my pups were. In the reflection of the glowing coals, I could see that one was sitting up. It was the boy dog. A leaf had become entangled in the fuzzy hair of a floppy ear. The ear flicked. The leaf dropped. Again, the hellish scream rang out over the mountains. Leaves flew as my pup left the bed. I jumped up and tried to call him back. Oh, so the boy pup went to check out what it was. Reaching the mouth of the cave, he stopped. Raising his small red head high in the air, he bawled his challenge to the devil cat. The bawl must have scared him as much as it had startled me. He came tearing back. The tiny hairs on his back were standing on end. So the boy dog went to the front of the cave and he tried to also kind of bark back to try and scare the cat. But he got scared. He still got scared and came back with little hair standing up. My father had told me lions were scared of fire. I started throwing on more wood. I was glad I dragged up a good supply while making camp. So Billy had plenty of wood left because he brought a whole bunch when he was trying to set up for camp for them to sleep for the night. So he just started making more of the fire bigger because he knew that lions were scared because that's what his dad told him. Hearing a noise from the bed, I looked back. The girl pup, hearing the commotion, had gotten up and joined the boy dog. They were sitting side by side with their bodies stiff and rigid, their beady little eyes bored into the darkness beyond the cave. The moist tips of their little black noses wiggled and twisted as if trying to catch a scent. So they're sitting there, they're staring into the darkness out from the mouth of the cave, and they're trying to sniff out to see what is that scent. What I saw in my pups gave me courage. My knees quit shaking and my heart stopped pounding. I figured the lion had scented my pups. The more I thought about anything harming them, the madder I got. I was ready to die for my dogs. He worked hard for those dogs, so he was ready to die for them. Every time the big cat screamed, the boy dog would run to the mouth of the cave and bawl back at him. I started whooping and throwing rocks down the mountainslide, hoping to scare the lion away. Through the long hours of the night, I kept this up. So all night long they were doing this, and the mountain lion just kept on staying out there, screaming, and the dog kept barking back, and Billy kept throwing rocks at him. The lion prowled around us, screaming and growling, first on the right, then on the left, and above and below. In the wee hours of morning, he gave up and left to stalk other parts of the mountains. I'm sure he thought he didn't stand a chance against 2 vicious hounds and a big hunter. He probably did think that. He didn't know it was a little boy with 2 little pups. Okay, that's it for chapter 5.